You're going to understand exactly how these devices work at the atomic level. And honestly, more importantly, you will literally never choose the wrong sensor for your application again. We are looking at the ultimate showdown today, the RTD versus the thermocouple.
Okay, let's dive right in with a tale of two very different factory catastrophes. Picture this. On one hand, we've got an industrial steel forging plant. A blast furnace is roaring at a staggering 1,400 degrees Celsius. Suddenly, the temperature sensor inside just completely melts into liquid slag. The burner controls are left totally blind, which triggers a massive, highly dangerous thermal runaway. But meanwhile, at the exact same time, inside a pristine pharmaceutical lab, there's a mixing vessel holding a liquid drug batch worth $200,000. The temperature sensor in this tank, it doesn't melt. Actually, it looks perfectly fine, but it subtly drifts by just 1.5 degrees Celsius. The result? Subtle thermal degradation that completely ruins the entire $200,000 batch. It's wild, but both of these disasters were caused by the exact same mistake, choosing the wrong sensor technology for that specific physical environment. So, to make sure you avoid those wildly expensive mistakes, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the Seebeck effect. 2, platinum and resistance. 3, a head-to-head battle. 4, wiring configurations. And finally, 5, the selection matrix. Let's get into it. Section 1, the Seebeck effect. So, the thermocouple. This thing is the absolute workhorse of heavy industry. It's rugged, it's incredibly simple, and it survives environments that would absolutely destroy almost anything else. It's basically just two dissimilar metals, say a chromo wire and an alumo wire, that are physically welded together at the tip to form what we call a hot junction. But the micro-level physics making this actually work, they're totally fascinating. Way back in 1821, a physicist named Thomas Johann Seebeck discovered something incredible. When you apply atomic heat to that welded junction of two different metals, the thermal energy literally causes the free electrons at the hot tip to get energized and migrate. And because the metals are different, the electrons diffuse away from the heat source down the wires at completely different rates. This migration literally builds up a charge, generating a tiny thermoelectric voltage across the open ends of the wires. It's like magic. It creates its own electricity purely from heat. Now, this whole phenomenon can be perfectly captured by a pretty simple formula. The V here is the electromotive force, or basically the voltage generated. The alpha symbol, that's the Seebeck coefficient. You can think of it as the unique thermoelectric fingerprint of the specific metal pair you're using. But I want you to look closely at the rest of the equation. T hot minus T cold, right? This is a massive revelation. A thermocouple actually does not measure absolute temperature. It only calculates the temperature difference between the hot welded tip and the cold connection terminals at the very other end of your wire. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. If your thermocouple is only giving you a relative difference, well, your control system desperately needs a baseline. Notice how the programmable logic controller, the PLC, has an input card that actively measures the ambient temperature of its own terminal blocks. Without this step, a simple change in the room temperature, like, someone opening a door or the AC kicking on, would completely invalidate your entire process reading. This built-in baseline measurement is universally known as cold junction compensation, or CJC, and honestly, it is the unsung hero of industrial thermal sensing. Okay, moving on to section 2, platinum and resistance. Alright, we're shifting gears now to the other major player in the automation world, the Resistance Temperature Detector, which pretty much everyone just calls an RTD. Now, unlike the thermocouple we just looked at, the RTD is a passive sensor. It doesn't magically generate its own voltage out of thin air using heat. It actually requires an external power source to work. To really grasp the RTD, we have to zoom way in and look at the behavior of metals at the atomic level. When a metal gets hotter, the thermal energy causes its atomic lattice to vibrate intensely. Imagine trying to sprint down a hallway while the walls are rapidly shaking back and forth. That is exactly what the electrons experience. The hotter the metal, the more violent those lattice vibrations become, and the more obstructed the flowing electrons get. And this highly predictable obstruction is exactly what we measure as a rise in electrical resistance. While a lot of metals conduct electricity, the automation industry relies super heavily on one very specific standard, the Pt100. The PT stands for platinum. We use high-purity platinum for this because it's chemically inert, incredibly stable over long periods of time, and its resistance changes in this beautifully straight, linear line as it heats up. And the 100? That just means this platinum sensor is manufactured so perfectly that it yields an exact electrical resistance of exactly 100 ohms at freezing or 0 degrees Celsius. So, this predictable behavior translates into a really precise mathematical model known as the Callender-Van Dusen equation. R0 is our baseline of 100 ohms. The alpha coefficient here? It's tiny, typically 0.00385. In practical, everyday terms, this means that for every single degree Celsius the temperature rises, the electrical resistance of the platinum increases by a totally minuscule 0.385 ohms. Because we are measuring such microscopic shifts in resistance, the RTD is capable of just breathtaking surgical precision.
Which brings us to Section 3, the head-to-head battle.
When you stack these technologies up against each other, the engineering trade-offs become incredibly clear. Let's look at the temperature range. Thermocouples can survive a blistering 1800 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's insane. RTDs, they top out around 600 degrees, but wait, look at the accuracy. The RTD provides surgical precision down to 1/10 of a degree, whereas the thermocouple has a much wider margin of error. Sometimes it's off by as much as 2.5 degrees. And then there's the speed. Because the thermocouple is just a tiny welded bead of wire with basically zero thermal mass, it reacts in milliseconds. The RTD, however, is packed inside a protective sheath and actually takes several seconds to soak up that heat. Finally, thermocouples are cheap to buy, but they require specialized, fairly expensive extension wires made of those exact same exotic metals. RTDs are expensive sensors up front, but you can wire them up with standard, dirt-cheap copper wire.
But look, specs on a piece of paper really don't mean much if the sensor just breaks, right? Factory floors are rarely peaceful places. They feature massive motors, stamping presses, heavy vibration. Because a thermocouple is just solid metal wires welded together, it can endure some really severe mechanical shock. The RTD, though, is a microscopic platinum wire wrapped around a super delicate ceramic or glass core. If you put an RTD on a violently vibrating pump casing, that ceramic core will literally fracture and shatter into pieces.
All right, Section 4, wiring configurations. So if you do decide to go with the ultra-precise RTD, you've got to navigate this massive hidden trap of signal conditioning. Remember, because the RTD measures such tiny fractions of electrical resistance, the way you physically wire it can actually destroy your accuracy entirely. The crucial trap to remember is this. In RTD logic, just one single ohm of resistance equals a reading shift of nearly 3 degrees Celsius. Think back to that ruined pharmaceutical batch we talked about earlier. Now think about the copper wire running from the sensor all the way back to your control cabinet. That wire has its own resistance. If you use a standard 2-wire setup, the resistance of a long copper cable is added directly to the sensor reading. That creates massive, false temperature offsets. To fix this, the industry standard practice is to use a 3-wire setup. By adding a 3rd wire, we create a compensation loop inside a really brilliant hardware circuit known as a Wheatstone bridge. This lets the PLC transmitter dynamically calculate the exact resistance of the copper lead wire itself and just mathematically subtract it right out of the final temperature reading. And if you want to take things to the absolute maximum level of lab-grade precision, you use a 4-wire RTD. This setup completely isolates the current from the measurement itself. A constant current generator pushes power down the 2 outer leads, while a highly sensitive voltmeter simply reads the voltage drop across the 2 inner leads. It is completely flawless. It eliminates absolutely all lead wire effects.
Okay, bringing it all together in Section 5, the selection matrix.
Here is the exact 3-step decision tree you should be using every single time you specify a sensor. Step 1, is your process temperature over 600 degrees Celsius? If yes, stop right there. An RTD is not going to survive that. You must use a thermocouple. Step 2, do you need accuracy better than ½ degree Celsius? Maybe for food safety or pharmaceuticals? If yes, you absolutely need the precision of a Pt100 RTD. And step 3, is the installation environment going to be subject to extreme physical vibration or rapid thermal spikes? If yes, you need the instant response and solid metal ruggedness of a grounded thermocouple. By actually understanding the underlying physics, choosing the right sensor becomes a matter of pure, simple logic.
Which brings us to our final thought today. Take a hard look at your own automation systems. Look at the plants you manage or the processes you design. Understanding whether a sensor relies on the Seebeck effect or atomic lattice vibrations, it isn't just trivia. It is quite literally the difference between a smoothly running plant and a catastrophic failure. So I'll leave you with this question to deeply consider. Are you one wrong sensor away from a $200,000 mistake?